There's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele Mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele Mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele Mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a Brachiosaurus or a Diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele Mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful, poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you, You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example, it's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lake bed. They also kinda resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though. Glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake. Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish, small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lake bed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these, where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances. Boats and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people noticed there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide?
It's the first day of your long-awaited trip to the Amazon forest. You flew all the way to South America. More specifically, you landed in the city of Manaus. It's the heart of the Brazilian Amazon. So far, you've traveled by air, car, and now water. You are on a tiny boat, moving through the dark waters of the Amazon River. Yes, the river is also called the Amazon. And just FYI, it's the second longest river in the world. It loses only to the Nile River in Egypt. The Amazon sprawls for an impressive 2,700 square miles, beginning in Peru and ending only when it meets the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Brazil. To get a closer look at the forest, you decide to start by exploring it by boat. First up, you watch some piranha fishing. You can even try to catch one yourself if you like. As you may know, piranhas are carnivorous fish that inhabit the Amazon River, so it might not be your best option to go swimming in these waters. One of the most emblematic species of alligators present in the Amazon River basin is the broad-snouted caiman. It looks pretty much like a regular alligator, except for the fact that it has a yellow chin. Your guide leaves the boat and searches the water to show you a caiman up close. He also tells you of another legendary creature that lives in the dark waters of the river, the pink dolphin. Lucky you get to witness a family of pink dolphins showing their fins near your boat. They look magical from the place where you're sitting. You've probably never known dolphins can be pink, huh? After a few mesmerizing moments, you discover that the dolphin's pink color is nothing but an illusion. The animals are originally pinkish-gray, but due to the brown colors of the Amazon River, they look vivid pink when you stare at them from above. Your guide tells you that the pink dolphin is a central character of Brazilian folklore. Locals believe that the pink dolphins can turn into humans and wander off into towns at night. You get off your boat near one of the entrances to the forest. Now you're going to continue your trip on foot. Your guide says that you are venturing into very dangerous terrain. The Amazon is home to some of the creepiest species of wildlife on the globe, but don't worry, we'll get to see a lot of them today. You've come prepared, of course. Bug spray, a raincoat, and your sharp eyes. Inside the jungle, you need to be alert at all times. You may have heard legends of the anaconda, a snake that can swallow animals as big as a cow in one go. Sorry to break it to you, but those are not just legends. Reptiles like these do actually exist. They live deep in the jungle. It right there, moving between the trees. Is it a spider? The so-called live bird eater is a monster spider. Its legs can grow up to a foot in length, and the spider itself can weigh around 6 ounces. It's also known as the king of tarantulas. You shouldn't get too close, of course. It's not venomous to humans, but its bite can surely sting. As its name suggests, the live bird eater can even eat birds, as long as they are smaller than it is. Up next, you run into another species of spider that draws your attention. This one is so tiny that you almost don't see it. It's known by the popular name of the decoy spider. You see one of its creations, a gigantic spider built by the tiny Cyclosa spider in order to scare off large predators. This is as amazing as it is creepy. A spider that uses the remains of other insects and dry leaves to create the image of a large spider on its web. If it fools predators, perfect! But to us humans, this work of art looks almost endearing. Who knew there were artists in the arachnid world? Near a small lake, you witness a unique scene. A large snake is slowly slithering its way toward a lizard that is resting on a rock. The lizard seems obvious to the presence of the dangerous reptile, but right as the snake is preparing to attack, the lizard flies the scene in its iconic way. The so-called basilisk lizard is famous for its ability to walk on water, or rather run across the water. This isn't an illusion, just a matter of balancing. The small lizard moves its legs on top of the water very fast, while its long tail serves as a counterweight. I wish I could do that. If you've ever wondered what a frog looks like on the inside, you've come to the right place. Right in front of your eyes, there is a rare local species of frog. It's known as the glass frog. This species of amphibian has a type of transparent skin that is completely see-through. In other words, you can see the frog's interior with astounding clarity. It's as if you had X-ray vision. Moving on with your journey, soon you come across a pond. Floating on its water is probably the biggest water lily you've ever seen in your life. These huge plants are also known as the Victoria Amazonica. They can measure up to 8 feet across and hold the weight of a grown-up person. But I wouldn't recommend trying to climb on it if I were you, just cause, you know, it's the Amazon forest we're talking about. The wildlife here is amazing, but the forest itself is also a sight. There are over 80,000 species of plants and trees grown in the Amazon rainforest. In fact, you can find 10% of all the world's wildlife in this jungle. An estimated 400 billion trees grow on the gigantic area the forest occupies. Of course, this place is bound to be biodiverse, right? You won't be able to witness this phenomenon during your trip, but your guide tells you about a unique species of tree that is famous for being able to walk. Yep, you've heard correctly. There are walking trees in the Amazon rainforest. They don't have legs or anything like that, but they do move around in search of better lighting conditions. The Amazon canopy is so thick that only 1% of sunlight can reach the forest floor. Because of this, some trees end up getting less sunlight than others. The so-called walking palm trees seem to be adapted to this situation. They grow new roots, which helps them move for 1 to 2 inches per day. They can walk up to 65 foot per year. Maybe that's what inspired John Ronald Reuel Tolkien to create ants, huh? Those are pretty similar tree beings that roam freely around the world. I kid you not, it's not only wildlife that inhabits the Amazon. Actually, over 30 million people live in the forest. And there are also ancient settlements that scientists believe to have been thriving there. And I'm not talking about El Dorado, that's just a myth. But in 2018, a groundbreaking study showed that up to 1 million people probably inhabited the Amazon, between 1250 and 1500 CE. Can you imagine that? Working alongside local indigenous people, researchers from the University of Florida found several mounds in the Amazon. Besides these mounds, they also discovered interesting ditches and geoglyphs. After mapping all of these recurring mounds, scientists understood that this was a sign of an ancient settlement. They found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas. This could only mean that these ancient cities were big and could host hundreds of thousands of people. These findings brought back the idea that the Amazon could have been home to thriving civilizations way before the Europeans arrived there. But rather than cities drenched in gold, they were simply well-developed agricultural societies.
Okay, let's play a little guessing game, shall we? Can you name the 6th largest river on Earth in terms of volume? That's the amount of water that flows through a waterway. The first couple of rivers are easy to list. Number 1, of course, is the Amazon River in South America. Then we have the Congo in Africa, and the Ganges in India. Feel free to name all the rivers on the planet. You won't get any closer to the answer. Why? Because this river is not on the surface, but underneath the waves of the Black Sea. In 2010, a team of scientists discovered this river while studying the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. Sonar scanning revealed a channel at the bottom of the Black Sea. The channel had water flowing through it. It turned out that at places, it's 115 feet deep. That's 3 times as tall as your average telephone pole. This flow of water acts like a real river. It has rapids and waterfalls, and its volume is 350 times greater than that of the River Thames in London. Talk about a strong undercurrent. If it was a surface river, it would really be in the top 10. Bad news for the Madeira River in Bolivia and Brazil, the present number 6. But how did this underwater river form? The answer lies in the amazing features of the Black Sea. It gets its water from 2 main sources. The first are the rivers that flow into it, like the Danube, Dnieper, and Don. Lot of D's there. But more importantly, they are all freshwater waterways. On the other side, quite literally, there is the Mediterranean, and it's salty, like a lot. When this salt water gets inside the Black Sea, it goes straight to the bottom. You see, fresh water is lighter than salt water. This creates stratification. It's a fancy term that simply means that the 2 types of water don't mix together. Salt water has a higher density, so it drops right down to the bottom. If you want to see how that works, you can do an experiment at home. Pour mineral water into 1 cup and salt water into another. Table salt will do. Then put a grape in each cup. You'll see how it immediately sinks to the bottom of the cup filled with fresh water. The grape will stay afloat in the cup filled with salt water. The same thing is happening inside the Black Sea. But there is another side to this phenomenon. The upper layer of water is rich in oxygen. This means it can support life. The bottom layer, however, is anoxic. Yep, you guessed it. This means there is no oxygen at the bottom. But this isn't a bad thing. Because of this trait of the Black Sea, shipwrecks are able to survive for centuries. Oxygen decomposes wood. And from what material did the ancient people make their ships? That's correct, timber. Recently, in 2018, scientists discovered the oldest Greek shipwreck on Earth. The merchant ship lies more than a mile deep at the bottom of the sea. Experts estimate that the vessel is 2,400 years old. The wreck was valuable for historians to study all the elements of ancient ship construction. From the mast to the rowing benches, it's all intact. The wreck lies some 50 miles off the coast of Bulgaria, but no one has seen it in person. Explorers sent a deep-sea ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, to film the wreckage. It was impossible for a diver to go down. But the Black Sea doesn't look that huge on a map. Could it be that deep? Oh yes, it's way deeper than people think. You could stack 6 Empire State Buildings at the deepest point of the Black Sea, around 7,257 feet. This inland sea isn't the only place on Earth where researchers have discovered shipwrecks and underwater rivers. One of the largest channels running along the ocean floor lies off the coast of South America. It runs from the mouth of the mighty Amazon and into the Atlantic Ocean. Studying underwater rivers isn't an easy task. The depth and the strong currents make it impossible to send in divers. Even the equipment for underwater research has to be sturdy. Otherwise, the current will just wash it away. That's why the underwater river in the Black Sea was ideal for scientists to explore. Earth's oceans and seas are powerful. But, lucky for us, there are places where divers can admire underwater rivers. Ever heard of a cenote? Sounds Spanish. Well, that's because it is. Cenotes are underground caves. They form after the limestone above collapses, revealing the groundwater under them. The term cenote is associated with the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Ancient Maya used them as water sources. In the Mayan language, the word cenote meant sacred well. Researchers estimate there are some 10,000 cenotes spread across the Yucatan Peninsula. You can also find them in other places, such as Cuba and Australia. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but unofficially, the most beautiful cenote is located just south of the town of Tulum in Mexico. The name reflects the cave's divine beauty, Cenote Angelita. But people don't visit this cenote to go swimming. Its bottom is much more interesting. A scuba tank is all you need to finally admire an underwater river firsthand. The waters are dark and foggy, so divers use powerful flashlights. After a 100-foot dive, a marvelous sight appears. An underwater river with trees along its banks. Some of them even have green leaves, just like any other water flow on dry land. But it's not really a river. Here comes the fascinating part. Remember how saltwater and freshwater don't mix? Well, the river the divers see is actually a thick layer of fog between the two types of water. 3 feet of hydrogen sulfates to be exact. This is the compound that water processing plants use to remove chlorine from drinking water. The substance is so heavy that the fog it produces moves independently from the surrounding water, and it creates an illusion that a river is flowing underwater. But there are other real rivers that play tricks on you. Take, for example, the Mystery River in Indiana. It's the longest underground river in the United States. Explorers discovered the river and its cave system, Blue Spring Caverns, in the 19th century. Nearly 3 miles of the river are navigable. Isn't that impressive? You can book a boat tour on a river that you can't even see. But the most mysterious river on the planet is the Saraswati River in India. The coolest part about it is that it doesn't exist. It was an alleged river only mentioned in ancient literature. For centuries, people thought that it was just a myth. Then satellite images showed that it might be real. Ancient texts spoke of a major confluence of 3 mighty rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. The first 2 are visible today, but where's the third one? That's what scientists decided to find out. Images from an American satellite showed the presence of underground water in the area. Until then, researchers thought that these were paleo channels. This simply means that water flowed through them a long time ago. But, to their surprise, it appeared that there was still water inside these channels. Scientists estimated that the Saraswati River flowed above the ground some 5,000 years ago. But it didn't dry up completely. It just went underground, some 200 feet below the ground. Local experts believe that the river still slowly flows into the sea. The Saraswati River got hidden under the desert sand. This was a natural process, but many rivers have been forced underground because of human activity. In London, England, several dozen small and medium-sized rivers now flow under the ground. Maps from the 19th century still show them as rivers. But today, they only exist in the names of the streets that were built above them, such as Fleet Street. The same thing happened in New York. But this doesn't mean that these streams have disappeared for good. When engineers want to rebuild or modify a building, they still consult city maps from centuries ago. No one wants a long-lost brook to flood their basement.
If you've ever driven over the Rocky Mountains, you've probably seen road signs for the Continental Divide, the backbone of North America. All watersheds to the west of it run into the Pacific Ocean, and everything on its eastern slope goes straight into the Atlantic. There's just one creek in Wyoming that couldn't choose one side and drains into both oceans at the same time. Two Ocean Creek begins its journey high up in the Teton Range. The snow-capped peaks provide the perfect backdrop as the creek starts its descent, winding its way through alpine meadows and dense forests. As the creek continues its course, it gets to the Two Ocean Pass. This is the geographical crossroads where the creek splits into two branches, the Atlantic Creek and Pacific Creek. The Pacific Creek goes westward and becomes part of the larger Snake River watershed, bringing its waters to the Snake River, which eventually merges with the Columbia River and, finally, reaches the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Creek heads eastward and flows into the Yellowstone, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers, and eventually empties into the Gulf of Mexico. If you connect the two creeks' watersheds on a map, you'll get a single blue line between Oregon and Louisiana. Explorers struggling to find the Northwest Passage between the two oceans never knew they could have used the creek. They would just have to use really tiny boats. Some scientists believe that cutthroat trout had better luck in that way. They managed to migrate from the Snake River to Yellowstone River, most likely using the Two Ocean Creek. Technically, fish can travel over 6,000 miles to cover the whole distance from sea to shining sea in fresh water. The creek could be just perfect for that journey. There are hiking trails in Grand Teton National Park that lead to Two Ocean Pass. If you feel adventurous enough, you can stand at the literal crossroads of the continent and see the beginning of two aquatic journeys. Lonar Lake in India popped up literally out of nowhere around 52,000 years ago. Newer data says it could be much older, probably over 500,000 years. At first, scientists were sure that the lake was in an ancient crater of a long-extinct volcano. But then, geologists made a detailed analysis of the soil and water and found out that Lonar Lake has a space origin. The minerals found in its soil are similar to those found in moon rocks brought to Earth during the Apollo program. The lake is an impact crater left by a huge meteorite, which was almost 6 times heavier than the Empire State Building. The impact was so strong that the volcanic rock melted and turned into glass. In 2020, the lake, which was already unusual enough, suddenly turned pink. It wasn't a part of an early Barbie movie marketing campaign. The detailed analysis showed that the water contained an increased level of unique microbes. They accumulate on the surface and emit some pink pigment. After a while, the microbes settled to the bottom and the lake became transparent again. Flamingos that got their food from the lake also got to taste some of the microbes and became an even brighter shade of pink than usual. One of the most famous sights of Yellowstone National Park is the Grand Prismatic Spring. It's one of the largest springs in the world, and it's inspired people who have seen it since at least the 19th century. Back then, a group of trappers mentioned an indigo blue lake boiling like a huge cauldron. Decades later, expeditions came to the spring to study it better and explain its unusual appearance. But because the spring at its widest point is longer than an American football field, they had to build a special vessel and travel far from the shore. The scientists traveling in the boat never wore life vests. They knew those would be useless if the boat tipped over. The water in the middle of the spring is of near boiling temperature, and those vibrant colors are the result of extreme organisms living in the hot water. The temperature changes as you travel away from the center. Different species that don't mind the heat have settled in different parts of the pool, giving it its famous diverse pigments. Back in the early 20th century, someone got the interesting idea to try to irrigate a part of Nevada's Black Rock Desert. They drilled a well and found lots of water, but it was near boiling temperature. The water was clearly not good for agriculture, so the human-made geyser was left abandoned. Over the decades, it slowly turned into an impressive cone of calcium carbonate deposits. Then, in 1964, a geothermic energy company drilled another well close to the first one. The water they had found was of the same temperature. This time, it wasn't hot enough for their needs to produce energy, so they decided to cap the well and leave. But water managed to get up and out, and it completely dried up the first geyser. The second one, which got the name Fly Geyser, is still flowing burning hot water rich in minerals. The cone is multicolored and looks like it's not from this planet, thanks to the algae living in it, which love the heat. Every summer, Caño Cristales in Colombia turns into a liquid rainbow, or the River of Five Colors. At this time, and until the end of fall, the conditions are just right for the riverbed to turn bright red, yellow, green, blue, and black. We owe this beauty to certain aquatic plants growing in the river, a special type of riverweed. During the wet season, the river moves fast and the sun cannot get to these plants. During the dry season, there isn't enough water to feed them, so the time in between the seasons has the perfect conditions for this colorful show. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. At some point, the number of tourists who wanted to see it became so huge that scientists got concerned it could be bad for this hotspot of biodiversity. The area is home to rare species of animals, birds, and plants. Now, there are ecotourism trails and strict opening hours. In August 2014, a man in Tunisia was going back home from the north after doing his business. It was a hot summer evening, and he was dreaming about water, when suddenly, it popped up right in front of him. There was a whole lake in the middle of the desert, and the man was pretty sure it hadn't been there several days before. The new body of water got the nickname Mysterious Lake, and actually became a great mystery. Hundreds of people came here to swim in the clear, cool water. The lake became a popular place, but a few days later, the water turned dark green. The locals didn't care about this and continued to bathe in the lake. But when scientists and geologists arrived at the place, they announced that the water was dangerous to swim in. The lake was stagnating. It didn't refresh itself from underground streams, and the rains didn't feed it either. That's why the water became moldy and dirty. The lake contained algae and a lot of harmful bacteria dangerous to the human body. Scientists also found out that the land in this region had phosphate deposits. This substance can decay. But even that didn't stop people from bathing in the lake in the middle of the desert. How it got there remains a mystery. Some experts think that heavy rains have filled a hole in the ground with water. Another, more popular theory says that an earthquake had formed the lake. The seismic activity must have torn the Earth's crust above the water table, and then underground springs had filled the crevice. So, in theory, the lake could drain back out one day, just as suddenly as it had appeared. Hey, how do you feel about taking a trip back in time? We're diving into the history of the Amazon forest to unravel the mystery of its lost cities. Grab your bug spray and hop on. The Amazon forest is the world's largest rainforest. The environment there can be extremely challenging for human life. Yet, the legend goes that the Amazon has been home to sprawling settlements rich in unmeasurable wealth. Could that really be true? Or is that none other than a figment of our collective imagination? The legend of El Dorado might be the myth that started this whole thing. As European explorers began their excavations in American lands back in the 1500s, word got out of an Amazonian civilization that used to paint their leader in gold as an offering to higher powers. The legend of El Hombre Dorado, aka the Golden Man, began to quickly spread around Europe. Explorers got excited at the possibility of finding an infinite amount of gold somewhere deep within the Latin American jungle. And as you can imagine, expeditions to the continent began to multiply with each passing year. It didn't take long before explorers found this civilization. They were known as the Muisca people and were located in Colombia, near Lake Gudavia. The Muisca people had a tradition of painting their leader, aka the Zipa, from head to toe in gold. In a ceremonial gesture, the Zipa would swim into the river, spreading gold dust all over the lake. For the Muisca, this was their way of acknowledging and thanking the higher powers of the universe they believed in. When European explorers heard and witnessed this practice, they were amazed. For them, gold was used solely for commercial purposes as their main currency for trade. This made them think that the Muisca people must have stacks and stacks of gold hidden somewhere in the jungle for them to use it so abundantly. Well, that's how the legend of El Dorado was born. What was once the practice of El Hombre Dorado traveled on word of mouth until it became El Dorado, a fictional city that was most likely to hide piles of gold. The hunt for this city led Europeans to spend large amounts of money to scour the Amazon forest. Unfortunately, all of their expeditions came back empty-handed. That is, if they ever came back at all. Now, jump to the beginning of the 1900s. In England, the Royal Geographic Society, a prestigious British institution, was looking for somebody willing to travel down to Latin America to trace the border between Brazil and Bolivia. More specifically, the part of the border that is nestled deep within the Amazon rainforest. One Sir Percy Fawcett was a Latin American aficionado, and he gladly volunteered to do the job. Oh, it's important to note that the Amazon forest is virtually the size of the continental USA. It sprawls across 8 countries, including Brazil, Peru, and Bolivia. And trust me, getting around is no easy feat. The jungle is covered in dense vegetation, and in addition to that, it's home to insane predators such as anaconda snakes, panthers, crocodiles, piranhas, and so on. But despite all that, Fawcett was very successful in his mapping adventure and seemed to be wanting to come back more. Back in England, Fawcett would scour diaries from other explorers hoping to learn more about the ancient Amazonian civilizations. He would read about the Incas and the Mayans and the great empires they built. He believed that if the Incas were capable of building empires that stretched over 2 million square miles, this could mean that other Amazonian civilizations could have thrived there too. During his research, Fawcett came across a report from a 16th century explorer. The report told of a city deep within the Amazon forest that held unimaginable quantities of minerals. A town that stretched for 15 miles without any space from a house to house. This report fueled Fawcett's imagination to a new extreme. From then on, he became obsessed with finding what he called the lost city of Z. Over years, Fawcett searched the Amazon forest, usually looking for stone ruins that could possibly indicate human settlements. On his later expeditions, he focused on exploring the state of Mato Grosso in central Brazil. He would travel from Europe and into the lower region of the Xingu River. The trip to the Xingu would take him around 14 days on foot. Then, he would set sail in small wooden boats accompanied by local indigenous leaders that knew the region better than anyone. How he communicated with the indigenous population is still a mystery, since they only spoke in local dialects. Some scientists believe that this could have been the real reason why he never found the city. They believed he wasn't able to communicate what exactly he was looking for. And this was not his greatest difficulty. As we've said before, Amazon is not a kind place for its visitors. In his diaries, Fawcett tells of encounters with a 60-foot-long anaconda, which he bravely survived. He writes of endless sleepless nights and waking up with his hands and feet swollen from mosquito bites. Some of his peers said he was invincible and tireless, but the day came during his 8th expedition when he didn't make it back home. Fawcett disappeared without leaving any trace behind. Some even suspect that he was close to reaching his lifelong goal. On the day of his disappearance, he sent an optimistic letter to his wife saying there was nothing to fear, and that he was setting out on a certain final search. Fawcett's failed attempt to find ruins seemed to support what had become a consensus among experts at the time. that this rainforest was too inhospitable to support large, complex societies, let alone cities. Experts were convinced that the Amazon's lost cities were nothing more than fiction. That is, until the 1960s, when modern research began to find evidence that suggested otherwise. Scientists discovered patches of extremely fertile soil. They called it Black Earth. And apparently, they found lots of it in the Amazon, especially alongside rivers. Further research even showed that such soil was created by human waste or the intentional burning of forests, which adds nutrients to the soil below, which could only mean bingo! The discovery of Black Earth was the evidence that large-scale agriculture was possible and probably did exist amidst the Amazon, confirming that settlements could have formed there after all. In the 1990s, along the Xingu River in Brazil, a team of archaeologists from the University of Florida made a remarkable discovery. Working alongside local indigenous people, they found very long ditches. After mapping them, they realized that these ditches were a sign of a big settlement. They were remnants of carefully designed walls centered around a plaza. Some were roads that led to more settlements. In fact, just this part of the Amazon, about the size of New Jersey, was once a network of dozens of settlements that experts believe could have been home to at least 50,000 people between 1250 and 1650 CE. Other discoveries were possible thanks to LiDAR imaging, a type of technology that allows researchers to take satellite pictures of the forest's ground without having to step inside of it. A network of trenches in Acre, Brazil, dates back to 200 to 1200 CE. These suggest settlements that could have supported 60,000 people. Other images from near the Xingu River suggest cities that could have housed about 50 million people. These were the lost cities of the Amazon. Believe it or not, these images suggest that Fawcett was very close to a major discovery. He was looking for the ruins in the right place, but he was looking for the wrong thing. Unlike cities such as Cusco, which used stone as their primary material, Amazonian settlements used wood and earth to build their cities. These materials are highly deteriorating and probably decomposed over time. Finding them required a bit more technology than what Fawcett had available at his time. Check out the cool map of New Orleans, USA. See those bold gray lines around the city? Those are levees keeping the city safe from the red flood coming in from Lake Maurepas, Lake Salvador, and Little Lake. Without those levees, New Orleans would be in big trouble with rising sea levels. Even with the levees, the damage looks pretty bad. The Biloxi and Jean Lafitte Wildlife Preserve look like they're almost underwater on the map. New Orleans is not the only city in the US that's at risk of going underwater. The city of Savannah is located right in the middle of Hurricane Central. But even without Mother Nature's fury, the place is facing some serious sea level rise. The Savannah River to the north and the Ogeechee River to the south might both overflow into the surrounding marshland, and that's not even the worst part. By 2050, there may be massive floods every year that will make history books look boring. Sorry to break it to you, but Miami is on the line too. The Sunshine State is shelling out around $4 billion to stop things from getting worse, especially in Miami Beach, a hotspot for tourists. As of now, over 1,200 houses are at risk of flooding. The Big Apple is also getting hit with more and more crazy floods. In November 2021, they even had their first ever flash flood emergency. But still, the city is not ready for it at all. Even the Statue of Liberty, one of the most famous spots in NYC, got messed up in Hurricane Sandy. Now with sea levels rising, Lady Liberty is in danger once again. Tabasco, Mexico is no stranger to flooding, thanks to its coastal location on the Gulf of Mexico. This low, flat state is covered in wetlands and forests and already deals with seasonal floods. But with sea levels rising, it could eventually be completely taken over by water. This would put at risk some seriously important things. like the Mayan ruins of Malpasito and Comacalco and Tabasco sauce. Sorry, the sauce comes from Louisiana. Jokes aside, it's not just Tabasco. Parts of the Yucatan Peninsula and Baja California are also at risk from rising sea levels. Panama City is also in trouble. Apparently, the super trendy Casco Viejo and the swanky Costa del Este hood might get submerged in 2050, when Pedro Arias de Avila first founded it. Fun fact, it was the first European settlement on the Pacific coast. The 17th and 18th century forts on the Caribbean side are also in danger. According to Climate Central, they might get washed away by rising sea levels. Even UNESCO has had them on its risk list since 2012. Some more sad news. The Bahamas is going to be hit hard by rising sea levels. I mean, Hurricane Dorian was already a huge bummer in 2019. And now, they're saying most of Grand Bahama, Nassau, Abaco, and Spanish Wells could go underwater by 2050 due to various reasons. Amsterdam. The Netherlands is one of the Low Countries for a reason. The city and its buddies Rotterdam and Den Haag sit low and close to the North Sea. You gotta hand it to the Dutch though. They know how to handle the water and keep it at bay with high-tech flood defenses. With sea levels constantly on the rise, it looks like their impressive system of dikes, dams, barriers, levees, and floodgates is going to get even more crucial in the future. Still, despite all the effort, some experts are afraid that the Venice of the North might go underwater by 2030. Well, this one is not something you would expect, but still. Venice is sinking by 2 millimeters every year, and the sea levels are rising. This means that the city is getting flooded more often, and it's only going to get worse because of climate change. Just like New Orleans, Venice has a flood defense system, but as the crisis gets worse, it's going to be harder and more expensive to keep it going. Even worse, beautiful St. Mark's Basilica has already been hit hard by flooding. They tried to introduce a flood barrier system, but even that didn't work out perfectly. In 2020, the flood barrier was not used and St. Mark's Square got majorly damaged. Looks like even when we try to prevent the effects of climate change, things don't always go according to plan. In London, rising sea levels are causing more flooding along the Thames estuary, and it's not looking good. Areas along the River Thames are especially at risk, putting iconic buildings like the Tower of London and the House of Parliament, as well as cultural hotspots like the Tate Modern and Shakespeare's Globe in jeopardy. And the British Museum? It has so much precious stuff, even Gollum would be jealous. We just can't let it go underwater. During your next Euro trip, make sure to add Bruges in Belgium to your list. Chances are you won't see it if you skip it this time. The thing is, it's also in danger of getting flooded. Bruges is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so we really hope they can protect it from any potential floods. Plus, it has a lot of nice local specialties we don't want to lose. You may not know it, but Andalusia in Spain is home to Western Europe's oldest city, Cadiz. It's been around for over 3,000 years thanks to the Phoenicians. But unfortunately, climate change is putting it at risk. Rising sea levels might flood the city's cobbled stone center, beautiful tree-lined plazas, and historic sea fortifications. And it's not just Cadiz. Parts of Andalusia are in danger of flooding too. Well, seems like one more destination must be added to your bucket list. Ho Chi Minh City, and especially its eastern marshy districts, are at risk, just like all the other places mentioned before. And it looks like the whole city is going to have a tough time with the Mekong Delta. While the main part of the city probably won't be completely submerged by 2030, flooding and storms are definitely going to become a big problem. So, it turns out that Bangkok might be in some hot water due to global warming. Literally, a 2020 study says that Bangkok could be one of the cities most dramatically affected by rising sea levels. It's sitting pretty low at just 5 feet above sea level. And to make things even more interesting, it's sinking at a speedy rate of an inch per year. And the cherry on top? The soil it's built on is super dense clay, which means it's basically a flood magnet. By 2030, parts of Bangkok, including the main airport, might have to get used to living underwater. The next city at risk is Kolkata, India. The fertile land in West Bengal has been a major key to their success for ages, but now it's causing some big worries in Kolkata and the surrounding areas. Just like Ho Chi Minh City, they could have some serious problems with all that rain during monsoon season. And the map of what could happen in 2100 is pretty scary stuff. The next destination is Shanghai, China. It's literally translated as the city on the sea, but it might actually end up under the sea. Climate control data is flashing red warning lights for this megacity, making it one of China's most at-risk cities. The Yangtze Delta, where Shanghai sits, and the Pearl River Delta, home to the Guangzhou, are both in hot water too, with lots of people living on low-lying land that might get flooded. The Maldives, a luxurious group of islands, already get flooded every year. Experts think they might lose 80 or even more % of their islands in the next 30 years. The Maldivian authorities aren't taking any chances though. They're already making plans to buy land in other countries, just in case they need to relocate the whole population.
Imagine you're driving across a bridge to visit a friend. The next day, you get in your car to go back, but there is no longer a river under the bridge you drove across yesterday. Believe it or not, this is exactly what happened to people in the south of Honduras when Category 5 Hurricane Mitch hit in October 1998. Choluteca Bridge, which the local authorities reconstructed earlier that year, was left in the dry, as the river now flowed around it, not under it. The structure soon became famous online as the Bridge to Nowhere. This waterway shifted its course overnight, but it normally happens over longer spans of time. A river will stop flowing straight when there is even the tiniest change in the landscape around it. Even something as tiny as a mouse can weaken a riverbank. Imagine a family of mice decides to start a home somewhere by the river and digs a cozy hole. Over time, water gets inside this hole and starts washing away any loose soil. Give it a couple of centuries, and the river will now have a bend in this place. And if you're worried about the mice family, don't be, because they moved out a long time before the water flooded their home. Things happen even faster for small streams because, well, their beds are also smaller. The current breaks down stones, the ground takes them in, and voila, a riverbed or bottom is formed. The current is the strongest in the middle of the waterway, and its power directly shapes the riverbed. The water flowing through rivers is full of soil and other particles. All this stuff goes from the spring into the mouth of a river and into Earth's oceans. In some cases, these particles build up at some point, and that's how new beaches, probably including your favorite, are born from fine-grained sand. On the other side of the river, the flow of water is much faster, so this fast-moving current literally slams against the next bank. Then, the process of erosion starts all over again. River erosion is what happens when the flowing water takes away soil. And I have to tell you, things go super fast there. That water is so energetic, it can even carve into rocks, creating a canyon. If the riverbanks consist of loose material, such as humus, that's the soil you plant a flower in, then it is easier for the flowing water to erode it. Rivers in the plains are often wide and slow because there's little resistance from the ground around them. So you don't have to worry about waves tipping over your boat on a flatland river. In the mountains, streams quickly wash away all the surface soil and gravel, revealing the bedrock beneath them. It's tightly bound, so mountain streams are literally set in stone, as they cannot wash away this bedrock. So we have erosion to blame for waterways changing their course, and also mountains and hills. When a stream reaches a mountain or simply a rock, it has two choices: to flow around it or carve its way through it. In flatlands, rivers don't have any natural competition, so they choose a more winding path. All this twisting and turning increases the river's total length from the source to the mouth. One such example is the mighty Mississippi River in the U.S. It has a lot of curves and bends, which are called meanders. In the last century and a half alone, the Mississippi changed its course several times. The last major case was in 1876 when it left the historic city of Vicksburg in the dry. 2 years later, a team of American engineers came to the area to construct the Yazoo Diversion Canal, which took 25 years to complete. Thanks to it, ships could once again sail to Vicksburg, reviving the town's economy. What happened in this southern U.S. town in the 19th century is an ordinary natural consequence of river erosion. The bends in a waterway grow sharper over time, making the water flow faster. This speeds up erosion, and individual bends slowly start approaching each other to the point they merge. When this happens, the river straightens up overnight, leaving a lake in the form of a horseshoe in the place where the bend was. This newly formed body of water is called an oxbow lake. These still water lakes either dry up, since they're no longer fed by a spring, or they turn into swamps. In some cases, humans use them as water meadows used for agriculture. Lake Chicot in Arkansas is the largest oxbow lake in North America, formed by the Mississippi several centuries ago. The source of the Mississippi is a lake in Minnesota, but a river can also start when two other watercourses become one, or when the water simply bubbles up from under the ground. Even melting snow can feed a river, like the Amazon gets its water from the Andes. Determining the source of a waterway can be tricky, so the debate about whether Amazon or the Nile is longer is still ongoing. What scientists know for certain is that the Amazon carries more water than any other river. 1/5 of all the fresh water that enters Earth's oceans comes from this South American river. When you look at the Amazon River on a map, you'll notice how it flows from Peru to Brazil, that is, from the west to the east. This direction might seem odd when you compare it to the Mississippi, which flows to the south on the map. It's so confusing because you probably know rivers flow down, affected by gravity, but down doesn't automatically mean south. Running water will try to find the easiest route down, so there are no rules in terms of cardinal directions. The Nile River is the best example of this, as it actually flows north into the Mediterranean Sea. Northern Egypt, where all those pyramids are located, is on lower ground than Sudan, where the Nile is formed when the Blue Nile and the White Nile merge. Ob in northern Asia and the Mackenzie River in Canada both flow northwest, while the Yellow River in East Asia flows in the same direction as Amazon, to the east into the Pacific Ocean. These major rivers are some of the best examples that a stream doesn't have to flow from the north to the south. Gravity is the only important factor that determines which way a stream will flow, as running water is all the time pulled downwards. The flow of water is faster on steeper slopes. When there's a sudden drop in the flow, waterfalls form. Angel Falls in Venezuela is the highest waterfall on the planet, with water dropping from a height of 2,600 feet. Watch your step. In a waterfall, the falling water can easily reach the speed of a Thompson's gazelle, but as a river approaches the end of its journey, it slows down significantly. The stream doesn't have enough energy to cut into the nearby land. All the sediment it has picked up along the way, such as sandstone, slows it down. At the place where a river meets the ocean or a lake, it gets rid of this sediment along its banks, creating a delta, an area rich in fertile soil. The Ganges in India has the biggest delta in the world, several hundred miles wide and visible from space. The Amazon, on the other side, doesn't have a true delta because the strong currents of the Atlantic Ocean wash away everything the torrent brings. The deepest section of the riverbed that runs along its middle is called a channel. This is where the current is the strongest, so ships travel on top of these channels. When engineers want to expand a waterway, they simply dig a deeper channel and voila, larger ships can now pass. This is just one way humans alter watercourses. We often strengthen the banks of a river to prevent erosion or build dams that stop or divert the flow of water. The oldest operational dam on the planet dates back to the time of Egyptian pharaohs. It was, of course, the first damn thing. Around 2,500 years ago, an earthquake completely changed the course of one of the largest and most famous rivers on the planet, the Ganges. Now, it's normal for rivers not to sit in one place, so if you live next to one, it could also just disappear without a trace or flood the whole city one day. In the case of the Ganges River, a supermassive earthquake became the reason for this dramatic change. Scientists say it might happen again, and it would be a huge problem for millions of people who depend on this river. The Ganges River starts as small streams in the Himalayas and travels a long way, over 1,500 miles. Along its journey, it meets other big rivers before all the water flows into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges has the largest delta in the world among all rivers. Just like many other rivers in the region, it slowly changes its path over time. These changes, if they happen when a river wears away its banks, usually takes a long time, sometimes decades. Scientists have discovered that the Ganges-Brahmaputra river system has shifted several times over the last 6,000 years. When they looked at satellite images of the Ganges Delta, they noticed something interesting. There was a crescent-shaped dip in the ground about 28 miles away from where the river is flowing now. This depression was over 1 mile wide and stretched for many miles. They thought it might have been an old main channel of the Ganges River a long time ago. In 2018, the team decided to visit the area to check it out for themselves and take samples to learn more about it. While driving back home, they noticed a pit where someone was digging dirt to create a pond. The next day, they planned to fill it with water, but the researchers spotted something strange in the dirt. There were vertical bands of light-colored sand mixed into the darker mud. These special layers are clues from the past. They show that an ancient earthquake made sand and water shoot up from below the ground and created sand volcanoes that were trapped in time. The scientists studied the sand and mud and figured out that these earthquakes happened around 2,500 years ago and were strong, with magnitudes of 7 to 8. The epicenter was over 110 miles away from the main stem of the river, but it was powerful enough to displace it. It could have affected around 140 million people. The Ganges-Brahmaputra system is close to spots where Earth's tectonic plates meet, so earthquakes happen here often. There's no danger right now, but scientists think that another massive earthquake could happen in the next few hundred or thousand years. It could threaten up to 170 million people. That's about half the population of the U.S. No one can predict exactly when an earthquake will happen or how strong it will be. Learning how earthquakes in the past moved rivers helps scientists figure out patterns and make guesses about similar events in the future. This knowledge could help us prepare better and create safety plans before another big earthquake strikes. Now, the Ganges isn't the only river at risk. The Yellow River, the Irrawaddy River, and rivers in the United States like the Klamath and San Joaquin all face similar dangers. The mighty Mississippi River has also switched its path many times over the last 7,000 years. Right now, there's a huge system of dams and barriers called a control structure in central Louisiana. This structure's job is to stop the Mississippi from spilling over its banks and joining a nearby river. But scientists think that, in theory, these barriers wouldn't handle mega floods. So the Mississippi could break free and change its course again. This would cause massive problems, especially in southern Louisiana. One of the recent examples when a river changing its course caused disaster was the Kosi River in India. In August 2008, over just a few days, the river's path shifted by almost 60 miles, which is a huge change. Floods happen in some parts of the state rather often, but they hadn't seen such strong ones in over 50 years. They affected around 1,000 villages and 3 million people, and about 1 million people had to be evacuated to safety. Since many of these people hadn't faced floods in so long, they weren't ready to handle it quickly. It caused even more damage to their homes and lives. Scientists have been trying for decades to figure out what exactly makes rivers suddenly change their course. A new study explains that two things work together to make a river to do it. This process is called avulsion. First, there's the setup, which is like building up tension before something big happens. Over time, sediment, sand, dirt, and other stuff carried by the river gets deposited in certain places. It either raises the river above the land around it or makes a nearby slope steeper than the river's current path. Then there's the trigger, which is like the final straw that makes everything happen. This trigger could be a big flood, an earthquake, or even something like a pile of logs blocking the water. Now, researchers looked at satellite images of about 170 cases of avulsion from the past 50 years. They noticed these events happen most often near river mouths and near mountains. Rivers were about 3 times more likely to change course in these places than in the areas between them. They also studied 58 river channels in detail, using super clear maps to measure super elevation. That's how high the river is compared to the land around it. They also measured slope advantage. That's how steep a new path might be compared to the river's current one. They found that near mountains, rivers often pile up so much sediment that they become super elevated and spill over. But near river mouths, like in deltas, rivers need a steep slope advantage to break through the mud and form a new path. These two factors work together like a seesaw. If one is stronger, the other doesn't need to be as strong for an avulsion to happen. To figure out where a river might go if it changes course, the researchers created a smart computer algorithm. This tool uses maps to measure the terrain's steepness and the river's flow to predict where the river might move. They tested it on 10 past avulsions, and it correctly guessed the path every single time. Scientists hope they could use these findings to protect people living near rivers from sudden floods. Rivers changing course played a big role in creating one of the first organized administration systems in the world. Scientists found clues for this in the territory of ancient Mesopotamia. This name means the land between two rivers, and it was between the rivers Tigris and the Euphrates. People living there relied on these rivers for water, food, and transportation. Scientists wanted to figure out how these sudden changes in these rivers affected ancient people. To do this, they used 2 kinds of maps. The archaeological maps show how ancient cities grew over time, including what types of buildings people built. Certain buildings, like big palaces or city walls, could show when each city first had an organized administration. The second kind of map showed where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flowed long ago. They often shifted, sometimes slowly, and sometimes very quickly and dramatically. Around the year 5000 BCE, Mesopotamia started to become drier and farming became harder. Farmers had to grow their crops near rivers, where they could use the natural floods to water their fields or dig little channels to bring river water to their plants. Because farming was so important, towns and cities grew near the rivers too, so people could stay close to their food. But when a river suddenly changed its course, people didn't give up. They worked together to dig long canals to bring water from the new river path back to their fields. The canals helped them get water again, and the administration buildings showed they were organizing as a community to solve big problems together. So think about it. What was the weirdest thing you've ever done for work? Printing hundreds of pages of useless reports or unknotting holiday lights? Well, there's a scientist out there who spent 100 days below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Dr. Joseph Dieterich, or rather Dr. Deep Sea as he likes to call himself, was living underwater as part of Project Neptune 100. This project is a long-term study of how compression affects humans, both physiologically and psychologically. Dr. Deep Sea, who's a biomedical engineer and University of South Florida associate professor, went under the sea to see if increased pressure can help humans live longer and prevent health problems that come with old age. From day one of the mission, Dr. Dieterich was actively sharing what was going on in his social networks. He mentioned that another important goal for him was to inspire scientists from different generations to study life undersea. After 74 days of the mission, he officially set a new Guinness World Record for the longest time living in an underwater fixed habitat. But he didn't just jump out on the surface after it, woohoo, and stayed the planned 100 days. The scientist definitely wasn't bored for those 14 weeks. He collected data, collaborated with other researchers, virtually taught a biomedical engineering course at his university, and reached out to thousands of students from 15 countries online. Once the mission was over, Dr. Dituri was greeted by his family and friends, the media, and many fans who were following his work online. Dr. Deep Sea is now 55 years old, and he claims that living underwater has really made him feel 10 years younger. The doctors who greeted him and the results of the tests they have so far prove the de-aging effect. Our hero has some improvement in his sleep and metabolism. He also noted that his body had shrunk a half an inch. Wow, 2,300 more days and he'd be a foot shorter. Maybe. Probably not. If you want to try a light version of what Dr. Deep Sea has gone through, you have two options. The first option is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. You go inside a special chamber where the air pressure is higher than normal. It helps more oxygen get inside your lungs. It has a healing effect on your body. Too much oxygen can be a bad thing, though, so these chambers must follow strict regulations. You can also stay in the exact same place where Dr. Dituri lived. It's called Jules' Undersea Lodge, after Jules Verne, the author of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's a two-bedroom apartment located 30 feet below the surface of a lagoon in Key Largo, Florida. Don't worry, your prospective home won't sail away. It's attached to the seabed by leg structures. There are 3 windows with a direct ocean view and some marine life outside. A lot of it. There's also a command center that keeps oxygen, water, and power levels under control. An air conditioner keeps the temperature comfortable, and a chef dives in to cook meals for the guests upon request. Now, you can't just dive in to see if they have a spare room, though. There's some paperwork involved for each guest. And you'll have to put on some gear and leave it in the wet room before you get into the nice and comfortable apartment. As for Dr. Dituri, he doesn't plan to stop his studies of how humans can survive in isolated environments. He's going to take a flight on a modified airliner where you can experience zero gravity multiple times. Something not for the weak of stomach. It's the next step to his dream of becoming a civilian astronaut and traveling into space by 2026. Dr. Deep Sea wasn't the first scientist to stay alone in an unusual setting for research purposes. Italian sociologist Maurizio Montalbini had spent a total of 2 years and 8 months in caves to see how the human mind and body would cope with complete isolation. He started his experiments in the 1980s. At the end of 1986, he entered a cave in the Apennine Mountains near Ancona in Italy. He would only get back on the surface 210 days later, which made him the world record breaker for spending the longest in complete isolation at that time. Montalbini survived on a high-calorie diet of powdered foods and pills, much like those that astronauts use on space flights. Scientists monitored his health using special tools from the outside of the cave. Maurizio would later break his own record, and he shared that the only way to do it was to make a friend of solitude instead of fighting it. He did his experiments in collaboration with NASA and universities around the world and proved that isolation affects time perception and sleep. An interior designer from Ancona was so inspired by the experiments that she volunteered to take part in a similar one herself in 1989. Stefania Follini spent 4 months in an underground room 30 feet down in the Lost Cave in New Mexico. The experiment was on circadian rhythms, those 24-hour cycles that are part of your body's internal clock. Stefania had no natural clues on what time or day it was. Soon enough, she stayed awake for more than 20 hours and slept for 10 hours at a time. So her biological clock changed into a 48-hour day cycle. She stayed entertained down there thanks to a guitar, a computer, 2 friendly mice, some frogs, and some grasshoppers. She decorated the cave with cutouts from cardboard when she got bored and did judo to stay strong and flexible. Once the experiment was over, the scientists who greeted Stefania asked her to guess what day it was. She felt like it was the middle of March, but in reality, she went out of the cave on May 22nd, so she lost the perception of time and 17 pounds. Her meals were super spread out because of her new regime, and because she mostly ate beans and rice, she had a shortage of vitamin D. You know that feeling when your parents tell you something all the time, and you wish you could prove them wrong? Well, it drove Dr. Donald Unger into an unusual scientific experiment. He cracked the knuckles on his left hand twice a day for over 50 years. He didn't get any terrible health conditions, unlike what his mother told him. Of course, that evidence can't be enough to prove or disprove this common belief, but there are other studies that showed the same results. Regine Gries, a biologist from British Columbia, Canada, decided to ignore the wisdom we all know: sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite, and let bedbugs bite her, around 180,000 times, all for science. She did it to test and find the most effective compounds to attract and trap bedbugs. Once those little unwelcome guests get inside your building, making them leave can be tricky and cost a lot. The biologist, together with her team, decided to see if baiting traps with pheromones could help lure the bugs and detect their gatherings before they multiply. They were missing one puzzle piece: the compound that bedbugs use to determine that a particular habitat is a safe place for them to settle. And that's how Gries became bait for bedbugs. Her team managed to find that the compound they were looking for was histamine, which humans produce during immune responses. The researchers believe this means they can produce really cheap chemical traps for those little pests. Dr. Kevin Warwick, former professor of cybernetics at the University of Reading, became the world's first real cyborg. He connected his own nervous system to a computer to see how technology can change healthcare. He implanted a device in his left arm to transmit his own neural signals to a robotic hand and control it. The scientist believes implants are the ideal solution for people with neurological problems, as they can control objects just by thinking about moving. And it doesn't have to be only about treatment. This tech can help all humans open up a huge potential if we link up the human brain to a computer or AI system.
Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. You're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, you're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Pavlopetri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Pavlopetri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Pavlopetri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered, and what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface, but in 1692 it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. about 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay might be the oldest civilization in the world.
Most rivers in the world flow into the sea, but the Okavango in Africa takes its massive waters right into the Kalahari Desert. And it looks like this river manages to do the impossible and defies gravity. The Okavango starts in the highlands of Angola, runs for 1,000 miles like any other normal river, and then drops into the largest inland delta on Earth, known as the Okavango Swamp. The delta has land slopes dropping at nearly 150 feet, which is about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. The area where the Okavango Delta is now used to be part of a lake that dried up around 2,000 years ago. It takes the Okavango water several months to complete its journey, and the landscape there is never the same. The first European to have found the delta was the Scottish explorer David Livingstone. Yeah, the Dr. Livingstone, I presume, guy? That's him. When he first saw it, he was shocked as he noticed that the water seemed to be flowing backward and even uphill. He saw two strong watercourses connecting the Okavango to the wetland systems to the east. Decades later, other explorers saw them completely dry. Several years later, the watercourses were full again, and they kept emptying and filling up, sometimes changing direction. Scientists managed to explain this mystery when they found a hidden network of faults, part of the Great Rift Valley, under the sand. When major earthquakes happen, like the one in Indonesia in 2004, the Earth sets off a chain reaction. Tiny cracks underground shift just enough to send a trickle of water down the river, and a flood begins, raising the water levels. Plus, in May and June, when winter begins in the southern hemisphere, floods bring more fresh water and life to the swamp. Islands get submerged completely during the peak floods and then resurface again at the end of the wet season. Wildlife just loves all the water in the delta, and you can often see migratory elephants bathing among pink lily pads and silverfish, bream, barbels, and other fish. There are lions, cheetahs, buffalo, wildebeests, hippopotamuses, hippopotami, zebras, wild dogs, crocodiles, and other species of animals. Storks, ibis, herons, cranes, and geese like to fly by, along with 450 species of birds. Although the Okavango has plenty of water that is priceless in the desert, people hardly settle along its banks. One big problem here is the tsetse fly. But if you're feeling adventurous, you can come here for a water safari. Scientists from Imperial College in London stumbled upon a totally unexpected river under the Antarctic ice sheet. It slurps up water from an area as big as Germany and France combined. Scientists used to think the lakes under the Antarctic ice were just chilling by themselves. But now it turns out they're part of an interconnected river network. Water under the ice can form in two ways, either from melted snow seeping down or from the Earth's natural heat and the ice grinding over the ground. The Antarctic gets a lot of surface melting during the summer, But Antarctica is usually too chilly for that. This newly found river is proof that there's plenty of water down there just from the ice melting from below. This river could make Antarctica lose its icy cover way faster. If things heat up enough to melt the surface, that water could rush down and mess with the base of the ice sheet, turning Antarctica into a melting mess like Greenland. If the ice starts moving faster than the water can handle, it's going to create more friction, making even more water and speeding up the melting process. The researchers are on a mission to dig deeper into how this river system works and see if it's causing trouble in other parts of the icy continent. Understanding what's going on down there could give us a heads up on how a changing Antarctica might shake up the whole planet. The Roe River in Montana flows for just a bit over 200 feet between Giant Springs and the Missouri River. It was mentioned in the Guinness Book of World Records as the shortest river in the world, but they had to remove this category altogether because there was some heated debate over this title. Residents of Oregon claim that their D River was the absolute champion, as it all depends on when you measure them. There could even be shorter rivers in Norway or Indonesia, depending on what you see as a river. The official definition says it's something that has constant flowing water in the form of a current and is fed by upland sources or another river, lake, or watershed. Creeks and brooks flow together to form streams. Streams become rivers, and rivers take the water from higher to lower lands, ending in the ocean. There are 12 stream orders, and the first two levels don't have other streams feeding them. So, Roe and its other short buddies technically deserve the title of rivers. I'm glad we cleared that up. Rio Negro in South America is the largest blackwater river in the world and the largest left tributary of the Amazon jungle. Its waters look more like strong tea and seem pitch black only from the distance. They get that dark color from humic acid. When plants containing phenol break down only halfway, they leave behind this tea-like hue. Some people believe that blackwater rivers can't be productive, but Rio Negro helps big fishing industries and has spots where turtles come to lay their eggs. Back in the 17th century, explorers didn't find tons of indigenous folks along the river. But it probably didn't have to do with its productivity, more with diseases and conflicts. There are around 700 different fish species documented in Rio Negro's basin, including at least 100 you won't find anywhere else. A bunch of those fish end up in aquariums, like the super popular cardinal tetra. There is a canal connecting Rio Negro and the Orinoco, which is another major river in South America. Many aquatic species try to move between the rivers, but only the toughest can handle the mix of blackwater and clearwater sections in that canal. There's a unique creek in Wyoming that drains both into the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. It begins high up in the Teton Range and later splits into two branches. The Pacific Creek joins the larger Snake River, which merges with the Columbia River and finally reaches the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Creek heads east and flows into the Yellowstone, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers and eventually empties into the Gulf of Mexico. If you connect the two creeks' watersheds on a map, you'll get a single blue line between Oregon and Louisiana. Explorers who were looking for the Northwest Passage between the two oceans never knew they could have used the creek. They would just need really tiny boats. Some scientists believe that cutthroat trout knew about this route long before people. They managed to migrate from the Snake River to the Yellowstone River, most likely using the Two-Ocean Creek. Now, every summer, the Caño Cristales in Colombia turns into a liquid rainbow, or the River of Five Colors. At this time, and until the end of fall, the conditions are just perfect for the riverbed to turn bright red, yellow, green, blue, and black. You gotta thank certain aquatic plants growing in the river, a special type of seaweed for all this beauty. During the wet season, the river moves fast and the sun cannot get to these plants. When the dry season hits, there isn't enough water to feed them. So the time in between the seasons has the perfect conditions for this colorful show. No other place in the world has anything similar. So at some point, the number of tourists who wanted to see it became so huge that scientists got concerned it could be bad for this hotspot of biodiversity. The area is home to rare species of animals, birds, and plants. Now, there are ecotourism trails and strict opening hours for visitors.
It was the beginning of the 20th century, and two rivals, Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen, set on their expeditions to become the first people in history to reach the South Pole. The race wasn't easy, and it ended tragically for Scott. Amundsen has won and set his tent on the pole before his rivals. A member of Scott's expedition known as Terra Nova, British geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor, not only survived the harsh conditions, but also made an unexpected discovery. He found a waterfall of what appeared to be blood at the rocky base of the glacier, which now has his name, in 1911. It took scientists more than a century to figure out what is behind the eerie coloring. A team of American scientists journeyed to Taylor Glacier with powerful electron microscopes to analyze its contents. Previous studies had scratched the surface of the Crimson Enigma, but no one had previously done a full-scale analysis of its mineralogical makeup. These researchers unleashed a whole arsenal of analytical equipment and spotted little iron-rich nanospheres. These teeny-tiny particles, 1/100th the size of human red blood cells, originate from ancient microbes. They flourish abundantly in the meltwaters of Taylor Glacier. These nanospheres are jam-packed with iron, silicon, calcium, aluminum, and sodium, forming a unique composition that paints the subglacial water a vivid shade of red. These nanospheres don't have the usual crystalline structure found in minerals, which is why previous detection methods failed to spot them. Taylor Glacier's icy depths harbor an ancient microbial community that has thrived in isolation for thousands or possibly even millions of years. This discovery could help us in the search for life outside of Earth. Dr. Ken Levy, a research scientist at Johns Hopkins University, has some impressive expertise in planetary materials and the analysis of Martian samples. He decided to find out what would happen if a Mars rover landed in Antarctica. Could it figure out what makes bloodfalls so mesmerizingly red? So, researchers treated bloodfalls as a simulated Martian landing site. They used techniques inspired by the rovers exploring the red planet. The samples they collected were sent to Johns Hopkins processing facilities. There, Livy unleashed the power of transmission electron microscopy and revealed the enigmatic nanospheres. He made the conclusion that our current methods of analyzing other planets' surfaces with rovers fall short. They can't unravel the true nature of environmental materials, especially on chilly planets like Mars. These materials might be super tiny and non-crystalline, throwing off our detection methods. To truly grasp the essence of rocky planets, we'll need transmission electron microscopes. Strapping one onto a Mars rover isn't feasible yet, but it could mean a start of a new era in space exploration. Have you ever seen a waterfall on fire? Every February, when the stars align just right, Horsetail Fall in Yosemite National Park gets a sensational makeover. As the sun sets, its rays hit the waterfall at the perfect angle, transforming it into a blazing display of vibrant orange and red hues. We don't know exactly who and when discovered this natural miracle. The original valley dwellers may have known about it, but they kept it to themselves. It wasn't until 1973 that photographer Galen Rowell captured the first known photo of the waterfall, bringing it into the limelight. Since then, the firefall has become a global sensation, spreading like wildfire on social media and drawing crowds from far and wide. This magnificent cascade draws hundreds of spectators every year, but they can only see the show under certain conditions. First things first, Horsetail Fall needs a flowing stream. If there's not enough snowpack in February, the waterfall won't have enough water to create the magic. The temperatures must be warm enough to melt the snowpack during the day. If it's too chilly, the snow will stay frozen, and the fiery spectacle won't ignite. Second, we need a clear western sky at sunset. Those sunbeams need a straight path to hit Horsetail Fall and make it come alive. And since the weather in Yosemite is ever-changing, clouds can magically clear up just in time for the show. If all the conditions are just right, you'll witness the Yosemite Firefall in all its glory for about 10 minutes. The mystery of the sailing stones in California's Death Valley National Park has puzzled scientists for years. Heavy stones seem to have a mind of their own and move across Racetrack Playa, a dried-up lake bed. They leave behind a trail on the cracked mud. There were all kinds of theories to explain this phenomenon, from magnetic fields or dust devils, which are strong whirlwinds, to mischievous pranksters. No one has actually witnessed these rocks in action, which only added to the mystery. In 2006, a NASA scientist named Ralph Lorenz entered the scene. He was studying weather conditions on other planets, but he couldn't resist the allure of Death Valley and those elusive sailing stones. He had an eureka moment while tinkering at his kitchen table with a Tupperware container. Lorenz filled the container with water, leaving a small rock poking out, and chucked it in the freezer. Then he placed this icy construction in a big tray of water with sand at the bottom and gently blew on it. The rock began to glide across the water, leaving a trail in the sand. Lorenz had been studying how ice can make big rocks float and move along tidal beaches in the Arctic Sea. Applying this knowledge, he and his research team figured out that, under certain winter conditions in Death Valley, enough water and ice could form to make the rocks float across Racetrack Playa in a light breeze. And as they glided, they left their mark in the muddy terrain. The River of Five Colors, Cano Cristales in Colombia, has the unofficial title of the most beautiful river in the world. For most of the year, it looks like any other regular river. The real magic happens between the wet and dry seasons, when the water level is just perfect. This unique river floor is lined with a special plant, and when the conditions are right, it bursts into a dazzling display of colors. Think vibrant reds, stunning yellows, and lush greens, all mingling with the blue water. It's like stepping into a living rainbow with 1,000 shades in between. This phenomenal display only lasts for a few weeks, from September through November. During Colombia's wet season, the river flows too fast and deep, covering up the river floor and denying the plant the sunlight it needs to turn red. And in the dry season, there's simply not enough water to support the vibrant life in the river. So you have to catch it at just the right time. The reason behind Maldivian beaches glowing in the dark at night isn't a mystery, but it doesn't make them any less impressive. It happens thanks to the bioluminescent plankton. These tiny creatures are like little underwater disco balls, emitting a cool blue glow when they are agitated or on the move. Imagine walking along the shoreline and leaving behind glowing footprints. You can even take a night swim amongst these magical plankton. Researchers have discovered that their bioluminescence is actually a clever defense mechanism against predators. When these microorganisms flash their little blue lights, it disorients and surprises their attackers. The plankton produces this light using a chemical called luciferin. These enchanting plankton can appear at any time of the year. The best chances of seeing them in all their glowing glory are from June to December. During this period, there's a higher volume of plankton in the seas of the Maldives, creating the perfect conditions for a luminous show after the sun sets and the night sky takes over. You'll only witness the magic of bioluminescent plankton when tidal currents bring them close to the shore in large numbers. It's hard to predict exactly when this spectacular show will happen, so make sure to do your research and prepare to take photos with a high ISO to capture it, exactly like it looks in travel catalogs.
A bridge, a very helpful structure that traces back to the Neolithic times. The oldest bridge in the world, at least the one that is still standing, is the Arcadico Bridge, built more than 3,000 years ago. But there's a river you cannot cross using a bridge, the Amazon River, the largest and longest river in the world. Okay, the Nile River is actually the longest river in the world, but the Amazon wants both titles for itself. The Amazon River is born in Peru and crosses Colombia and Brazil until it reaches a massive delta at the Atlantic Ocean. Its waters travel a longer distance than Frodo and Sam, and yet not a single bridge has ever been built over it. Why is that? First of all, seasonal floods change the size of the river. During dry seasons, the Amazon is about 3 miles wide, but during heavy rains, it can get up to 30 miles wide in a few weeks. Not only that, but the flood also makes the river change its position. Now imagine trying to build a bridge in a place where the ground turns into water for about 4 months. Not an impossible task, but not the easiest one either. Now, if you look back at your geography classes, you might remember that the soil of the riverbank can be very soft, especially in the Amazon, which means it can erode and shift. Heavy rains also create marshes, a type of wetlands that actually reduces the magnitude of the floods and purifies the water. It's also home to many animals. This means that to build a bridge, part of this wetland would have to be drained, which would ruin the lives of all those animals. Besides, the foundations of said bridge would have to be deep, and that would cost a lot of money. The rain creates yet another problem for the potential bridge. It increases the river's water level by 13 to almost 50 feet. Of course, bridges have been built in deep rivers before, like the Padma Bridge, a gigantic structure with a foundation of 417 feet. But because the soil of the Amazon River can erode easily, a bridge would have to be built using floating structures, known as pontoons, and they're not helpful in a river that changes depth whenever it feels like it. Next on our list of things that are a problem to human endeavors is the Amazon rainforest. This forest spreads over 9 countries and is so big and so dense it could cover about half of Europe. This means that a bridge would almost likely connect one patch of the forest to another. A pointless improvement to the lives of capybaras and jaguars. Of course, the real users of such a bridge would be humans. Most people live around the tributaries of the Amazon River, not around the river itself, because who wants to live like a beaver at a dam? There's even a state called Amapá on the left side of the Amazon River that is completely cut off from the rest of Brazil. You could easily take your car and visit its neighbor, a place called French Guiana. But if you wanted to go to another part of Brazil, you'd have to find other means of transportation. Aside from small riverside populations that live right on the riverside, of the Amazon, bigger cities were built near tributary rivers, like the Rio Negro, which has a bridge, by the way, and the Nanay River in Peru. The bridges that go over the Nanay and the Rio Negro are the only 2 bridges over the rivers in the Amazon basin. The lack of good roads and highways inside the Amazon also makes the creation of bridges a pointless endeavor. Back in the 70s, humans had big ideas on how to explore the Amazon ever more, which is why they decided to build a highway which would cut the Amazon basin from left to right. The road, called the Trans-Amazonian Highway, was supposed to bring people to the heart of the Amazon. But it seems like the difficulties of building more than 2,000 miles of road inside a dense rainforest were not foreseen. Halfway through, the project was abandoned because it was super expensive and problematic. Nowadays, highways in the Amazon basin are always flooded, filled with holes and mud. This whole situation creates a ripple effect. People don't live near the river because it's hard to access it. The roads don't go there either, because it's hard to build them, which in turn makes even fewer people want to settle on the banks of the Amazon River, because they have no roads to get them there. So, if there are no roads and no bridges, how do people live there? You're not gonna believe this, but the riverside population uses a very old but reliable invention called a boat. The Amazon River is fully navigable, and the people that live there use it like a road. Much like motorcycles, cars, and buses, the Amazon River has canoes, speedboats, and ferries. There's even a very specific ferry called Obidense, transporting people to the municipality of Óbidos, hence the name. Locals do everything on boats. They even have a boat hospital that floats around and visits riverside populations, and a boat bank, so you can do all your bank-related things while looking at the vastness of the Amazon. Honestly, genius invention. The downside to this lack of bridges is that it stops us from exploring the truly hidden gems of the world. In the Amazon, for example, there are over 10,000 undiscovered archaeological sites. We may never be able to dig out stuff like fortified villages, geoglyphs, and many other structures. It would be pretty neat to go full-on Lara Croft in the middle of the Amazon, but these findings are tucked deep in the heart of the forest. At the same time, only on a boat are you able to witness the crazy phenomenon of the unmixed waters of the Rio Negro and the Solimões on the Amazon River. For more than 3 miles, these two tributaries of the Amazon River flow side by side without mixing. The speed and the temperature of these waters are different, so you'll see a river that looks like coffee and Coca-Cola mixed. This awesome phenomenon is called the meeting of waters. But the Amazon River is not the only river in the world deemed bridgeless. The Congo River, the second longest river in Africa, only has one bridge crossing it. The two Congos, yes, there are two different countries in the world named Congo, are separated by the Congo River, and so far, no roads connect them. Also, fun fact, some geologists believe that back when Gondwana existed and the continents were all cuddled together, the Amazon and the Congo River were one river connected to each other. Another place with a lack of bridges is the east side of the Thames in London. The west side of the river is narrower, which makes building a bridge easier. There are about 33 bridges on the west side alone, but if you want to cross the river from the east side, it's gonna be a hassle. The thing is, back in the 1800s, shipping companies decided that building too many bridges over the Thames was too expensive, because this was a shipping route and the bridges would have to be taller than usual. The structure would also have to be long, since some parts of the Thames are about 1,870 feet wide. But building long bridges is not a problem per se. In Rio de Janeiro, for example, you can find the Rio Niterói Bridge, which is about 8.26 miles long. Back when it was built in the 70s, it was the second longest bridge in the world. The bridge is so long that in 2018, a girl was born while her mother was crossing it, and now the birthplace in her birth certificate is literally the bridge. There's also no U-turn on it, so if you drive onto the bridge by mistake, you're in for a long drive. So next time you feel like exploring the Amazon, remember to pack your own boat.
So, contrary to popular belief, labeling the Nile as the longest river in the world might be a misconception. The measurement of a river's length entails more than simply calculating the distance between its starting point and end point. Rivers are intricate systems comprised of various tributaries, which significantly impact their overall length. In fact, when accounting for these tributaries, the initial figure can increase up to threefold, exemplified by the Mississippi River. From its origin in Itasca to its conclusion in New Orleans, the measurement suggests one length. However, the inclusion of the Missouri River alters this perception entirely. This discrepancy has fueled ongoing debates regarding the Nile's length compared to that of the Amazon River. Despite Google's recognition of the Nile as the longest river worldwide, it may not fully align with the factual reality. That's a nice way to put it. To comprehend this concept, envision rivers as the veins within a human body. It would be inaccurate to assume that a 6-foot-tall individual only has 6 feet of veins, right? Veins intricately weave throughout the entire body, much like a vast network. Rivers operate under the same principle, and the length of the main river is not the sole consideration. The extensive network of tributaries holds equal importance. Meanwhile, atmospheric rivers are fascinating meteorological occurrences, characterized by air currents that transport incredible amounts of water vapor all the way from the Amazon rainforest in northern South America to as far as northern Argentina. These airborne highways serve as essential conduits for the life-giving moisture carried by these airborne rivers, and their influence extends across Brazil's central west, southeast, and south regions, shaping the waterfall patterns in these areas. When these ethereal rivers converge with specific weather conditions, such as a cold front, the latent humidity they bear can transform into much-needed rainfall. This precipitation plays a vital role not only in sustaining the diverse ecosystems of the region, but also supporting Brazil's thriving economy in multiple ways. The significance of this phenomenon is evident as it enables the irrigation of crops, ensuring agricultural productivity and food security. Additionally, it replenishes local rivers, keeping the water flow steady and supporting aquatic life. Moreover, the water collected by these rivers is channeled into dam reservoirs, providing a reliable source of energy for the nation. The amount of water carried by the airborne rivers may match or even surpass the enormity of the Amazon's flow. Thus, when we unite the conventional Amazon River with its aerial counterpart, it becomes significantly larger than the Nile. Atmospheric rivers are also observed in the Congo basin, where the climate is predominantly shaped by the moisture emanating from the Atlantic Ocean and the forests of the Congo basin. This incredible phenomenon leads to evaporation levels as high as 3 to 6 feet of water per year. These rivers vary in size and strength, but on average, they transport a water vapor volume comparable to the flow at the mouth of the Mississippi River. In rare cases, exceptionally powerful atmospheric rivers can carry up to 15 times that amount. When these rivers reach land, they release the accumulated water vapor, resulting in rainfall or snowfall. Although atmospheric rivers come in various forms, those with high water vapor content and intense winds can cause extreme precipitation and flooding, especially when they linger over flood-prone watersheds. An example of a well-known atmospheric river is the Pineapple Express, a robust system capable of transporting moisture from the tropical regions near Hawaii to the U.S. West Coast. Such events can disrupt travel, trigger mudslides, and lead to significant destruction of life and property. However, not all atmospheric rivers pose risks. Many are weaker systems that provide valuable rain or snow, essential for maintaining water supplies. Plus, they play a critical role in the global water cycle and have a close association with water supply and flood hazards, particularly in the western United States. In addition for the potential for flooding, atmospheric rivers also contribute to desirable increases in snowpack. A series of atmospheric rivers was responsible for severe winter storms that battered the U.S. West Coast from western Washington to southern California between 2010 and just recently in early 2024, resulting in rainfall ranging from 11 to 25 inches in certain regions. So, if water vapor can be considered a river, it begs the question, what else can be classified as a river? Surprisingly, even without any water, something can still be deemed a river. This fascinating phenomenon is known as a wadi, traditionally referring to a river valley. Wadis can be found in gently sloping, almost flat areas of deserts. Unlike traditional rivers, wadis lack permanent channels due to the sporadic presence of water flow. As a result, they exhibit braided stream patterns caused by limited water supply and an abundance of sediments. The water that does manage to reach the stream bed percolates down, causing a sudden decrease in energy and significant deposition. Additionally, wadis can develop sediment dams, altering stream patterns during subsequent flash floods. Interestingly, wind also plays a role in sediment deposition within wadis. When wadi sediments are submerged or moist, wind-driven sediments settle on top of them, resulting in a mixture of both water and wind sediments. Rivers can be peculiar not just because they consist of sand or air, but also because of their fascinating coverings. In certain conditions, Scotland's River Dee reveals an intriguing sight: peculiar frozen formations that resemble lily pads. These formations, called ice pancakes or pancake ice, occur naturally when gentle waves cause smooth pieces of ice to collide, resulting in smooth rounded edges. As these ice disks interact with the waves, they gain raised edges, giving them an appearance reminiscent of lily pads. Usually, pancake ice has a somewhat slush-like consistency. Some media reports have suggested that the ice on the River Dee formed from frozen foam. But scientists explain that while it is plausible, the pancake ice still develops through the collision process. Over time, these ice pancakes often merge together, forming large sheets of ice. If the ice becomes thick enough and the water remains turbulent, it can bend, fracture, and stack upon itself, creating remarkable structures called ice ridges. Now, imagine a river not made of water but of methane. It may sound like an outlandish idea, but on Saturn's moon Titan, this is actually a reality. Vid Flamina, a fascinating river on Titan, consists of liquid methane and ethane and has drawn comparisons to the mighty Nile. Stretching over 249 miles, it gracefully flows into Ligeia Mare, which is Titan's second largest hydrocarbon sea. While most of Titan's surface is composed of water ice, Vid Flamina stands out as a breathtaking river that carves canyons into the icy terrain, mimicking solid bedrock. NASA scientists believe that this extraordinary river hosts rapids, whirlpools, and even waterfalls, mirroring the features found in Earth's rivers. When NASA's Cassini probe reached Saturn in 2004, its main goal was to explore this giant planet and its moons. Scientists were particularly interested in finding evidence of liquid methane on Titan due to its unique surface temperature and methane-rich atmosphere. However, initial observations from Cassini concentrated on Titan's equatorial region disappointed the researchers as they found no signs of seas or rivers. But this disappointment turned into excitement when Cassini's orbit shifted, enabling the team to focus on other areas of Titan's surface using radar techniques. Surprisingly, radar signals bounced off various angled and rough features such as sand dunes, cliffs, and rocks. But when the radar reached Titan's polar regions, the signal ceased, revealing mysterious dark spots resembling lakes, rivers, and tributaries akin to those found on Earth. The groundbreaking discovery came in December 2012 when Yanni Radabau, a scientist working with Cassini's team, announced an image captured in September of the same year. The image unveiled a river resembling the Nile, extending over 200 miles in a relatively straight course, indicating a correlation with fault lines similar to other significant rivers nearby. This remarkable flowing body navigates through rugged and inclined terrain, suggesting the occurrence of tectonic processes comparable to those on Earth. Now, of course you know that the Amazon River is famous for its piranhas, bull sharks, and other creatures you don't want to meet. But there are even more dangerous rivers in the world. The deepest of them, the Congo, goes so far down in some sections that even light can't reach there. It's the only major river that crosses the equator twice and carries enough water to fill more than 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Wow! Even the most experienced boaters have trouble passing through all of the river's strong currents, rapids in its upper part, and waterfalls and gorges in the lower section. The Congo currents are so fast and powerful that they even divide animals like mountains and oceans do. There are new species of fish evolving separately on the two banks as they can't reach the other side and breed with each other. One of the most dangerous types of fish living here is the Goliath tigerfish. These monsters, that grow up to 5 feet and travel at the speed of 25 miles per hour, are relatives of piranhas. Their mouths are full of vicious, razor-sharp teeth. Their females lay hundreds of thousands of eggs, and the offspring are predators from birth. You have a good reason to fear the Goliath tigerfish, as they're the only freshwater fish in Africa that have attacked crocodiles and even humans. Okay, not swimming there. There are dense jungles and more hungry wildlife, including snakes and some aggressive hippos, all along the river. Still, it's used as a water highway in Central Africa, so barges traveling on it for weeks are often crowded with up to 2,000 people and capsize every now and then. And if you believe the local folklore, there's one more thing to be afraid of: the one who stops the flow of the rivers, a dinosaur-like beast that is said to live in the Congo River basin. There have been over 100 sightings over the last century, but no one can provide solid evidence the beast is real. At the turn of the 21st century, there was a series of terrible, mysterious stories on the Kali River in Asia. Something described as a mud-colored water pig would drag swimmers underwater in front of terrified eyewitnesses. British biologist Jeremy Wade stepped up to crack the case. He noticed that all the scary incidents were happening in one specific spot, stretching about 4 miles. Villagers told him this creature was growing big and bad from all the food it got. Wade examined the water with a depth sounder and thought it could have been a whirlpool. Then the monster dragged a domestic water buffalo into the water. The buffaloes are big and heavy, so the creature that attacked it would have to be super strong. Saltwater crocodiles don't go so far inland, and the most common local species of crocodiles don't live in cold waters. There were no bull sharks in the area either. Finally, Wade spotted several goonch catfish underwater. Some of them were human-sized. They couldn't capture these monsters with a regular fishing rod, but a special ceremonial construction did the job. The largest fish was 6 feet 7 inches long and 3 times the weight of an average gaunch. It was large enough to take down a human or a large animal, but Wade mentioned there could be even bigger ones living in the Kali River. The Orinoco River in South America is dangerous to navigate because of some crazy curves and strong underwater currents. It's easy to get lost here, even if you have your GPS on. There are sudden waterfalls all along, and you must be prepared to handle those to survive. The river is the only home to a rare Orinoco crocodile and has some pretty scary-looking vampire fish swimming around. This payara fish has sharp, spiky daggers that line their gums and two elongated fangs that rise from their lower jaws. Could probably use an orthodontist and some braces, you think? It's a ferocious hunter constantly looking for the next victim, which is going to be a medium or large-sized fish. If a human catches a payara, it will defend itself, leaving cuts, nips, and bites, but there are no known cases of this cutie taking a human life. Well, that's good. The Yellow River in China received its name after its color, but it wasn't always this yellow. It was first formed at least 30 million years ago and shifted its course over 30 times over the centuries. Yellow sediments moving downstream from a plateau in the distance transformed it from clear to muddy. This fine-grained substance piled up at the bottom of the river and formed natural dams. The huge amounts of water that the river carries need to find their way to the sea, and that's when major floods happened, taking several million lives in various epochs. The locals tried to solve the problem by building higher and higher levees, but it only made things worse. Water coming out of the river would now have nowhere to back up, as the riverbed was higher than the surrounding land. This even shifted the river's mouth. Now there are massive dams and dikes all along the river to try to contain it. The Parana River is the second longest in Latin America and has many tributaries. They flow in from the highlands near the Andes, and there's a huge drainage in the wet season. This makes the river a perfect home for, guess what, piranhas. There are 30 to 60 species of these scary fish in the Parana waters. In late 2013, they attacked bathers cooling off by the water on a hot day. People started running out of the river as they felt something was biting them in the water. Luckily, no one lost their lives in the accident, but it's still considered one of the most audacious piranha attacks ever recorded. Biologists later determined that the type of piranhas, called palomates, was to blame for this, and humans had probably disturbed their breeding grounds. Well, the piranha also has a strong current that is tricky for boats and swimmers to overcome. Plus, it often floods, which can be dangerous for people living in the surrounding areas. The longest river in the world, the Nile, flows through 11 countries all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. Expeditions have spent centuries looking for its source, and no one still knows for sure where this mighty river begins. Adding to the mystery, the Nile takes an unexpected turn right in the middle of the Sahara. Scientists have figured out the reason is a massive underground rock formation from millions of years ago. The Nile has served as the most important water highway for civilizations through centuries, but it has some pretty dangerous inhabitants, like crocodiles that grow to be 20 feet long, which is slightly more than the height of an average giraffe. These bad guys can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour on land and take the lives of a couple hundred people every year. Hippopotamuses that also live here sometimes go after boats, and venomous snakes like the black mamba and the Egyptian cobra add to the mix. One of the most dangerous creatures on the Nile is the mosquito, as they carry around all sorts of diseases that affect hundreds of thousands of people. The Brahmaputra River in Asia carries waters from the mighty Himalayas. When the snows in the mountains melt, the river floods massively, causing landslides, displacing millions of people, and taking the lives of hundreds of animals in the nearby national parks. Such floods are also common during the monsoon season in India, from June to October, with heavy rains. The course of the Brahmaputra River has changed incredibly over the past 2.5 centuries. Erosion is another danger it's hiding. The banks of the river are mostly made of weak cohesive sand and silt, and even though the erosion rate has gone down, it is still the reason a lot of people lose their land and get displaced. The Brahmaputra is one of the few rivers in the world that has a tidal bore. That's a strong tidal wave that pushes up the river against the current where a river empties into an ocean or sea. And there you have it. If you need to cross a river, always check the conditions first. choose the narrowest point where the current is slow and try to avoid deep and fast-moving areas. If you have an opportunity, put on sturdy footwear and find a walking stick. It'll keep you more stable. When crossing, always face upstream and maintain a slight angle. If you're moving in a group, link arms. It'll provide you with additional support. If the conditions become too challenging, turn back immediately. And never try to cross a river at night. That's one of the most dangerous things you can do. Rip currents are strong, narrow currents flowing outward from the beach through the surf zone. They present an immense hazard to swimmers. If you get caught in a rip current, try to remain as calm as possible. Move parallel to the shore until you get out of the current. After that, swim back to the shore. If you can't get out of the current, float or tread water and signal for assistance. You can do it by raising one arm and waving. If you accidentally fall into rapids, immediately grab onto something you can find around you, like a log or a bunch of sticks. It might prevent you from being dragged further away. Even if you feel that the water is quite shallow, don't stand up trying to walk to shore. You might get dragged down by the current again. Instead, try to swim down the river, moving closer to the shore. Or you can float on your back with your feet pointed downstream. This way your head will be more protected. Once you reach a calmer spot, flip over and swim diagonally toward the shore. If you're at sea and spot a whirlpool coming towards you, don't panic. If you understand which way it's spinning, ride to its side and use the whirlpool's current to catapult you out of danger. If you start fighting it, you're likely to get pulled inside. There's also a chance a whirlpool will dissolve or become weaker closer to the bottom. So if you do get trapped by it, take a big deep breath and wait for an opportunity to swim up and away. If you're nearing a waterfall edge and realize that the plunge is possible, take a deep breath right before going over and prepare yourself for the drop. Try to position your body so that you'll be going down feet first. Wrap your arms around your head with your elbows pressed to your nose. It's a relatively effective way to seal it from water. Then tense your muscles and press your legs and feet together. Don't forget to close your mouth and eyes tightly. Once you hit the water at the bottom of the waterfall, start swimming away even before coming to the surface. If you've fallen into the water from a ship or a boat, first of all, scan the area around you to see if anything that floats has fallen into the water with you. It can be a pool noodle or an empty jug. Swim towards this object. If you're lucky enough to be wearing a life jacket, swim sideways or use backstrokes for short intervals to conserve energy. Once you reach the object, hold on to it and don't let go. If you see something bright, yellow, orange, or red, in the water, keep it. These colors are some of the most visible ones. They can help rescuers spot you. You must slow down the rate at which your body is cooling down. You can do it by floating, not swimming. In calm waters, you can float horizontally with your knees raised to your chest. If the conditions are rough, it's better to float vertically, focusing on not inhaling water. If you start moving around a lot, the air trapped in your clothing and shoes will disperse, making you less buoyant. So, stay as still as you can. Tsunamis often happen after serious earthquakes in areas with large bodies of water. The most dangerous thing about them is that they move extremely fast and often flood populated districts without any warning. The first thing you need to do is move as far away from the shore as possible and find some higher ground. It's great if you manage to get up as high as 100 feet above sea level. Using tall buildings and high trees to seek shelter is not recommended, but if you don't have any other options, climb as high as you can. If you live in an area that can be affected by a tsunami, plan an evacuation route in advance. This will help you gather yourself in a critical situation. If you've fallen through the ice into freezing water, try to get back to the edge of the ice. Don't pull yourself out by grabbing. The edge will keep breaking, and you'll exhaust yourself in no time. Kick your legs until your body is positioned horizontally in the water. After that, get out of the water and onto the ice like a seal. Once you've made it there, don't stand up. Remain spread out. This way, your weight will be distributed over a larger area. Then, the ice will be less likely to break. If you're falling from a cliff, do your best to break your fall into several parts. The shorter they are, the better. Each of the segments will absorb some impact of the fall, and you'll have much higher chances to survive. Try to grab onto a sturdy object, like a bush or a rock, on your way to the bottom to slow your fall. There's a survival myth that it's safe to drink salt water in small amounts, but such a delusion can have very dramatic consequences. Drinking any amount of salt water will lead to dehydration. It's better not to drink anything than to drink salt water. If you've gotten stuck in quicksand, do all you can to keep your head and arms above the surface at all times. Start to carefully wiggle your legs. Quicksand will fill the space previously occupied by your limbs. Then, stretch out on your back. It'll increase your surface area. Keep making tiny movements until your legs are free. You can also use backstroke motions with your arms. It'll help you pull your legs out. Try to put your weight onto your right leg and shake your left foot, slowly bringing it closer to the surface. Once you've done it, put your knee on top of the sand so that you're in a kneeling position. With your weight on your left knee, carefully shake your right leg until you can bring it up into a kneeling position too. After that, move off the sand. Make sure not to pull your legs up with too much force because you can tear your knee ligaments. There's a misconception that if you find yourself surrounded by snow with no drinking water at hand, eating snow is the best way to rehydrate. Unfortunately, it's false, and eating snow can lead to further dehydration. Once you put some snow in your mouth, your body has to start a process that will melt the snow and warm it. To do it, you'll need to spend a lot of energy, and it will make you lose liquids faster. Plus, eating snow can result in hypothermia. This condition is twice as dangerous if you're on your own. The chances are that snow contains harmful bacteria that can make you sick. But if you don't have any other solution, melt the snow you're going to consume in your hands first, and stay away from the snow that doesn't look fresh and white. If you're lost in the wilderness, find a stream or a small creek and follow it until it merges with a larger river. It will take you to a more developed and inhabited area where you'll get help. But don't fall for the myth that you can drink the water if you see animals drinking it. If you manage to find a source of water, you need to purify this water first. Your body is very different from those of animals, and if you don't purify the water before drinking it, you can get extremely sick. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.